Hey there, Internet! Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear, so that you know what is or isn't worth spending your hard-earned money on. So this video is going to be for anyone who's been following the channel and wants to know what I'm thinking about the knives I've been using, or anyone who's interested in either the ESEE Izula 2, Spyderco Manix 2, or the Leatherman Squirt. If you want to see the original video where I talk about why I chose these three knives / multi-tools, you can just follow the card right up there, and that video will kind of explain to you my thought around why I went with this combination. Really briefly, I'll just say that the idea was to have one beater that I could use for things that you might not want to use most knives for. ESEE Izula 2 is a pretty rugged little stubby beast, which has a warranty that will basically allow me to replace it if I were to ever do something stupid and snap it in half. That being my main beater, this allows me to have the Manix 2 pretty damn sharp most of the time. I don't think it's quite hair popping sharp at the moment. Yeah, we're getting a few there at the body, but it's definitely one that's still gotten quite a bit of use. The edge, if you've ever had a brand new Spyderco knife, this edge is not a brand new Spyderco knife for sure. It's been worn down, it's been resharpened a couple of times now. If you've seen my last video where I talked about installing a zip tie Emerson Wave knockoff type thing onto your Spyderco knife, then you might have seen that I couldn't quite get through the thicker zip tie with the scissors that were on the Leatherman Squirt. They got through the smaller zip tie, the regular kind of small, thinner plastic one. The white plastic one's no problem. Thick zip tie is not quite allowing me to... I can get a little bit of a dent, and you know what? If I really wanted to... If I threw some gloves on, maybe my thumb's just not tough enough, because that I feel like it's going to go through my thumb before it goes through that zip tie. Pliers. Inside these pliers, you have those little tiny cutters in there, which I dare say the wire cutters are the only other thing on this that are 420 HC steel. The other thing being the knife, of course, but no problem at all getting through that with the wire cutters. Good to know those perform well if I ever need them. And you know, this thing, I have not used it nearly as much as I kind of thought I might. Although the pliers have come in handy more than a few times. The file I've definitely used, not a ton, but enough that it's got some wear on it. I've used the scissors more than anything else, and I have yet to use the knife on here, which was kind of the plan because the knife is only meant to be a backup, because I've normally got 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other knives on me that have much more capable blades. So this thing should still be, it's that chisel grind, so still razor popping sharp. How does it work on the opposite side? Yeah, still pops hair off just fine. So yeah, still ready for action in case I ever needed a backup blade. The screwdrivers on here have been a little bit disappointing, more so the Phillips head. It's only a half Phillips, and it's basically just that one size. You can see I've actually sort of rounded it out a little bit. Just noticing that now, because I tried to get this into something that was a little bit bigger than what this head would fit into, and I maybe stripped it a little bit. Pretty bad for that. Then the larger flathead works great, but a little too big for some stuff. The bottle opener I've actually used recently. I don't drink a ton of beer anymore, things that require me to open them with a bottle opener, but I did happen to give this a try here a few weeks back, and it wasn't working great at first. I had to find the right angle. I ended up just kind of getting a little frustrated and using the Manix 2 to just get the job done, which isn't smart. Don't recommend doing that. Be nice to your knives. I was more just doing it for the sake of getting that little clip, but I did figure out afterwards that I was just not quite getting the angle right. If this were a hair bigger, it could get the bottle cap no problem, but just with the size of it, maybe it was just that particular Stella Artois bottle that needed or cap, I guess, that needed to really be precise, but it actually did work quite well. The Izula 2 was one that I was extremely excited about, and the beginning of this channel really was my moving from carrying the Recon 1 for 8 years, doing all kinds of terrible stuff, to that knife, and then putting the time and effort into figuring out what the best replacements would be. So there was a lot of hype in my mind when I finally got both the Manix 2 and the Izula 2 as far as what I thought they'd be able to do, and I guess as far as them being the overall best fixed blade EDC and the best overall EDC folding knife that you could probably grab. Those are just opinions, and I'm not saying that's the absolute single best and the absolute single best knife in their categories. Recon 1, in a lot of people's minds, mine included, is one of the very best all-around EDC knives that you could carry. However, it's a little bit large. The Manix 2 is a little bit more, it's still a large EDC, but a little bit more EDC friendly by a lot of people's standards. But certainly check out the individual reviews for these knives if you want to get a little more detail on what I've used them for and just how good I think they are for the hard use type of stuff that I end up getting into. But being that I was used to smashing this and twisting and prying and doing all kinds of terrible non-knife tasks with this, which again I'm not recommending, I kind of went into using the Izula 2 just like that, pretty much with the idea that it could not be broken, and that as long as I was always cutting, pushing, whatever in a safe direction, that I was probably going to be able to get away with doing a lot of stuff pretty safely. It's small enough that if I'm using a large fixed blade, very easily I could overdo it and maybe cut through something a little too aggressively, maybe have a bad backswing and, like, I don't know, slice my calf or something. With this thing, it's so small, it's so easy to control. One big downside is that it doesn't have enough weight to really get through a lot of branches in the way that a larger fixed blade might. Whenever I needed a bigger fixed blade, I'd have something like the K-Bar Large Heavy Bowie or the K-Bar 1211 USMC, 1211, 12, 12, 13, 12, 14. They're all the same model, just the different variations on the blade and the handle. There's a full video. Actually, my very first video on the Hog channel was the K-Bar USMC review. Yeah, with something like this, you can really drive that blade through and get a little more leverage on stuff that you're cutting. But I haven't really had too many problems with this. I'll be honest, between the two of these, this makes a better hot dog stick, and it actually, because it's got a little bit more of a slicey blade, slices through that young growth on those, I guess those lateral branches on the lateral branches. Any forestry nerds out there know what I'm talking about. Oh God, it's sad. But basically, this has been what I've wanted to use if I really don't want to struggle too much, unfortunately, with tasks like that. This does really well on a lot of rugged, hard use stuff, and I have done, well, I've taken a few branches off of a large springy spruce tree batoning with this. I wouldn't want to baton with my Manix 2. I bet you I could, and I bet you that ball bearing lock would take quite a bit, but that's not a good idea, even for the Hard On Gear channel. When the channel gets to the point where I have enough income coming in from the channel that I can afford to buy an extra Manix 2 to smash up, that'll be definitely the stuff I'll be looking to get into. In the early days, in order to keep this sustainable for myself, I'm not going to go smashing $200 pocket knives, batoning them for the sake of destroying them. I can tell you pretty much for sure a triad lock or maybe another really well-built back lock would be about the only thing that I would want to hammer on like that. As far as the general wear on this thing, there's a bit of, well, you could probably scrape a lot of this off or wash it off pretty easily. It's mostly dirt, maybe a little bit of clay from the soil. If you haven't watched the earlier videos, I have done the fire mod for this where you remove that powder coating on the back to reveal that carbon 1095 and add some kind of a fire steel to your carry, which I just taped the steel that came with the Izula, that mounting kit. Just taped it right on there with some electrical tape. You could use a rubber band, black bands, or any kind of like a black inner tube or something like that. There's tons of things you could do that would look better than this. I just don't really care, and it's tucked under my shirt. Nobody's really looking at that sheath. But that belt clip, super awesome. Really big fan of that. The sheath has worn down a little bit. As I said in my Izula review though, this one has got more wear just because I've done a lot of practice drawing and resheathing, but it's still, the retention's still damn decent. So long as you keep those top two screws tightened up, you really shouldn't have much issue with that popping out of there. You can go check out my full ESEE Izula review if you want to see all the stuff that I've got with this knife and different things that I've tried out, but I've also do have that slim down carry sheath that I could use as a pocket slip or carry it kind of old samurai fashion just tucked into my belt line. But that powder coating has actually lasted quite well. Where there is no powder coating, you will get rust. I'm out on the east coast of Canada, and there is some salt in the air, and I know without a doubt if I don't keep this oiled, it will continue to rust. Honestly, not a huge issue. Every now and then I'll just give that a little scrape and re-oil it, and I don't want to wear it down too much. Obviously, I don't want that to pit and become an issue, so I do need to take some care of that. But on the other end of it, I kind of am okay letting it see, I guess, how much I can get away with. Story of my life, push a little bit further than I'm supposed to and just see how far I can get before I need to replace it or learn from my mistakes. Hence the name of the channel. I'm not going out of my way to smash things, but I'm hard on stuff. God, I'm hard on stuff. So the blade surface, don't keep it oiled all that much. Again, 6 months in, I did actually just touch this up on the strop yesterday. Yesterday. So it is shined up a little bit here. I think it was yesterday I touched this up. Regardless, it was a little bit rustier before I did that little touch-up job. It will get rust on the end, not a big deal. That 1095 stays pretty sharp, and I use this a decent amount. Not too concerned about it. The micarta's worn in nice. I really like the way it sort of adds that weathered and worn in look to it once it's been used for a while. Although I don't think the fit and finish on these is ever perfect with the handle scales added on to the Izula 2, but I dare say it was pretty spot on when I got it, or at least better than this, and now it's slipped a little bit. The tang of the knife is poking out a little bit further than the scales. Maybe it was like that before and I never really paid attention to it, but I can see it inside that hole as well. It's not a big deal. I think it might just be general slow wear and molding into my hand, which if that is the case, it's probably just molded that way because that's the way I'm typically holding and torquing on the knife. I don't know if it's quite done that over the course of 6 months that I've had it. This is my first micarta anything, so maybe it does mold quite that well, quite that quickly. Real big fan of this thing. I mean, I'm going to try a few different EDC fixed blades just so I can have a good comparison to measure up against this thing, but there's a lot of great reviews. There's not really any bad about the ESEE. I mean, everyone's got a few cons, but overall as a fixed blade EDC knife or even just a fixed blade bush or survival knife, it's probably not as big as what you're going to need for an end of the world scenario, but I mean, for pretty much anything you're going to need a knife for, you can find a way to make this work. Having this, that squirt, and of course the generic folding knife like most people would carry, gives me the ability to cut just about anything or do any kind of tiny little destruction job. I don't want to say too many like handy tasks because I'm not great at them anyways. All the things I would use a screwdriver for, I would normally be able to remove it with a hammer just as quick. And probably anything that's more delicate than that, I'm going to maybe get some assistance from someone who's less destructive. Not that I couldn't learn simple trades, and I really should get my ass in gear and get a little more capable with that stuff. I just have no bloody patience for tiny meticulous. Like, to be something like a watchmaker or a gunsmith, I'd probably be no good and I'd start smashing things very quickly. But for any twisting, prying, removing of things, smashing, bashing, cleaving, small cleaving tasks at least, or any slicey, dicey, stabby kind of stuff that I might have to do, I think I've got all my bases covered. Could I have a few different tools, like different things like a small pry bar, like different EDC pry bars? Maybe I'll get a small keychain one to try out, but I don't really see me carrying a whole lot of other huge stuff. I've already kind of got the wallet, which I'm rocking that chum sucker now, which Gideon's Tactical bragged up long enough, figured I'd try it out. And the other main thing I'm carrying almost all the time if I'm just in jeans and a t-shirt is the Streamlight Stylus Pro, which, funny enough, the last probably 4 months or so that I've been carrying this in my EDC on a daily basis, I'm using this more than my freaking knives, which I never in a million years thought I'd be a flashlight guy. Still not a flashlight guy. Still not going to dive into that world yet because God knows if I get exposed to it, terrible things could happen. But for now, this is really serving the purpose of a cheap EDC light that I'm not going to lose as easy as one of those smaller ones about half the size. AAAs are easy enough to find, but they last quite long. And I mean, I don't think I need anything different than this right now, but if anyone's got some suggestions for a better flashlight that they think might serve my purpose, that's not going to cost me $100, $200 because I'm probably going to lose it. Second one of these, I did lose the other one that I had. It's in the woods somewheres in the province that I'm in. I mean, between these 4, I've got myself pretty darn covered. I've also been carrying a first aid kit on me a little bit more lately, just in case I do something stupid like cut myself with a knife. But I mean, I could sit here and talk all day about how much I love the Manix 2, and maybe that's what some people are waiting this whole video to hear, so I'll give you this much. I truly believe I made just about the best decision ever when I narrowed down my selection to picking this as my new EDC folder. To give you a good idea, I was down to the Manix 2 from Spyderco, the Paramilitary 2 from Spyderco, which I might have in the mail, which you might see coming in the next week or two, birthday present to myself. The third knife in that mix was the Benchmade 940-2, which I did get not too long after creating this channel, mostly because I created the channel and I had an excuse to get it. And it's a very popular knife that I was really close to ordering instead of the Manix 2, but fact is, this is not hard use enough for what I typically would want to use my knives for. So while this is awesome, I really enjoy the design. I like the backstory. Now, Warren Osborne did not design this knife to be a knife that would break easily. It's supposed to be somewhat of a medium use, hard use. It's a decent work knife. Maybe one day if the channel's pumping in enough money that I can afford to go and spend $200 on a knife just to go destroy it, we'll get to see. For now, I want to try and keep that thing in decent shape because it is sort of just a showpiece and a bit of a fun novel item for myself, and I have been carrying it just about every day along with these knives. The only thing this hasn't been used for much has been eating, because I've been using this as my steak knife, partially to see the comparison between how well the S30V wears. Where I'm using this for everything, I'm getting to see in all kinds of scenarios how much retention that S30V has, and then how easy it is to touch back up. With the Benchmade 940-2, I haven't got to use it as much, although you can see quite a few scratches near the tip. It has been used for different tasks, and I have used it for a little bit of carving and different things just to see what it can do. But for the most part, I've been using this thing on tons of dinner plates, and if anyone knows anything about knives and sharpness of steels, you're going to dull a knife out as soon as you drag it across any of that stuff. So the S30V's held up well. I don't notice, like, there's definitely a little bit more sharpness left to the... Yeah, well, I say that, and you know what? The tip might just be as sharp, if not sharper than the body. And I swear the tip's what should have gotten most of the abuse, being that it's, you know, cutting through steak and stuff like that quite a bit. So I guess really this belongs in that video just almost as much as these. While this doesn't get used for general EDC tasks as much, it has been carried pretty much every damn day. If you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving it a like, that would be awesome. There's also a Patreon link in the top of the description if you want to support the channel. The Patreon money will be going towards hard use knives like this, and those knives will be voted on by the patrons of the channel. I will destroy that knife and see what it can hold up to. I greatly appreciate your patronage. I greatly appreciate any support you're watching this video this far, and until next time, this is the Hard On Gear channel signing off.